Good morning. Well, welcome. I'm Barry Ohm, and I'm here to talk about a Leave No Trace Principle 1, Plan Ahead and Prepare. I'm out here at Pinnacles National Park, and there's many aspects to the Plan Ahead and Prepare. Obviously, it's the foundation of putting together a successful trip. Navigation, the equipment you're going to bring, your group dynamic, your leadership style, and also access, travel plans, and also you want to talk about getting some permits. Those last three items are the ones that I want to talk about today, which are access and permits and travel planning. Um, the major groups that you have to get permits through for most big locations are United States Forest Service. You have to go through the National Park Service. Sometimes the BLM you have to get permits from. Most of those permits now are readily available online through a website, recreation.gov. A lot of the big ticket places, like say if you wanted to go hike Mount Whitney through the Whitney Zone, there's a permit process at a certain time of the year that you put in for a lottery to be able to get a ticket. Grand Canyon's the same kind of way. Also, a lot of places you can simply drive up to the wilderness office and you can put in for a permit and talk to a ranger. Most of the time, all the time in fact, they're going to want to have some kind of trip itinerary, some kind of plan, some kind of contact, right? They want to know where you're going to camp, how many days you're going to be, what your objective is going to be. You know, all these restrictions serve a couple purposes. One, they want to know who's in the backcountry and who's in the wilderness. They want to know when you're supposed to come out to help facilitate a rescue. Another part of it too is to try to keep the wilderness experience so that you don't impact the environment, the water resources, the wildlife, and also for another leave no trace principle, they want to make it so it's nicer for the other people so they get to share that same wilderness experience. I think it's a good idea anytime you go on a backcountry wilderness trip that you also take that same plan that you've made up for the rangers that you're going to use for your trip, and you leave it with a friend, and you give like a window of, I usually leave about 36 hours of when I'm supposed to leave an area, that I'm going to contact my friend to tell him, hey, you know, I'm back in, it's safe, the trip went good. There's a lot of devices you can buy now, SOS devices, and some of them you can even track your travel on the trip, and you can just push a button and that'll send out an emergency alarm, and it'll put emergency services into action, and you very well could get a rescue. But I just want you to know, I think there's nothing that replaces self-sufficiency. The idea that you can just push a button, realize that when you push that button, you're setting a lot of people into action to be able to get together. It's not going to happen immediately either. For people to get together, make the trip out, find you, right, and then put together a plan to rescue you. So I believe there's nothing that replaces good decision making and being self-sufficient in the backcountry. Let's talk about some like bigger objectives. I've done a little bit of mountaineering, and if you go to a place like say Mount Rainier, you're going to be getting your permit, and you're going to be meeting with the rangers, and they're going to have a little discussion with you. Same thing on your trip plan, but they're going to also know like what your experience is. They're going to want to know if you have any experience with glacier travel, if you know how to rescue out of crevasses, and you're going to have a conversation with the ranger to get your permit. A place like Mount Rainier, you're not going to be able to do a solo trip by yourself unless you have a big enough resume and experience with those rangers that they sign off on for it. Solo trips on bigger mountains like that are not allowed. See here, another thing I'd like to talk about too is a little bit about travel. You know, I'm out here at Pinnacles National Park. The park's supposed to open today at 8 o'clock. They've changed the access. They don't let people drive to the trailheads, and you have to basically have a campsite to be able to hike into the park. They are allowing some minimal amount of parking in the park, and all this kind of things are related to the COVID-19. For the next year of travel and wilderness trips, you're going to have to take into account of these things. Just like Tahoe, where they're asking people, please don't come visit our mountain town because of resources for COVID-19. Same things happen in other small areas of the country too. Another example would be Yosemite National Park. You know, Yosemite is not supposed to open this year, or at least as of now, for people just doing day trips coming into the park. They're talking about in June opening up. If you have a hotel reservation, you can stay in the hotel. If you have a campground reservation, they haven't determined yet if all the campground spots are going to be used or just some of the spots are going to be used. And then they're talking later in the year having a lottery for some day people coming in. If you have a wilderness permit in Yosemite right now, you can use that wilderness permit, and that brings up a lot of other different topics for another day, as far as, hey, we're setting up our national parks for like the people with the most money that can afford to spend that $300 a night in that hotel room at the Wani. I think the COVID-19 thing too, it's also going to make some changes in travel plans. I had a trip this year planned to go up to Alaska, and in first thing in March, I started reading that Alaska is going to require people traveling to the area and or people coming home to the area to do 14-day quarantine in place. And then a couple weeks after that, we got the notice that they're not going to issue climbing permits in Denali National Park. So that threw a whole big chain of events and things of canceling my trip. And I was actually pretty fortunate, because all the things that I had set up, once they were canceled, I was able to get my money back. And that's a whole dynamic that I think traveling in the next year or so, if you're going to do it, that you're going to really need to account for those kinds of things. And you're going to also need to account for like changes that the Park Service makes on the fly. You know, all these different entities have websites with information on them, but I don't find them to be quite up to date. You know, they don't daily go on their website and give you an updated report. So you're going to have to be flexible. And, you know, and I think for rock climbing, if you enjoy rock climbing, you're going to be going to the crags. That's going to be another issue for access. You might find that you go to a climbing area, you've made the drive, you've got yourself up, you get to the crag, and the crag's already got a crowd of people on it. I think you're going to need to be flexible this year and have a backup plan to which you can, you know, utilize, whether it's bring your mountain bike along or just plan on going for a hike. And it's going to be tricky, I think, at least the next year, and people are going to have to be flexible. I'd also like to talk too real quick about as far as access, you know, parking lots. It's always good to have a little bit of cash on you with a 10, 5, and some ones, because you might have planned to go to an area, you've drove all the way out to a trailhead, and you find out, hey, I got to pay $13 to park here. And it's good to have a little extra cash to be able to do that. Nothing worse than not being able to put the money in the till to be able to park. Another thing too to consider, especially in the Tahoe Basin, there's different passes for region areas. You know, there's a National Parks Pass, which I utilize every single year, and I get one. You know, it enables me to go to Yosemite. It enables me to go to Joshua Tree. I'm from Southern California. I spent a lot of time going to Tahquitz when I was younger, and that actually paid for parking in the National Forest parking lot at the Tahquitz Trailhead. In Tahoe, you know, we have the Snow Park Pass that every person in Tahoe that does winter sports needs to get. And, you know, these passes also put a little bit of money back into the system to help support the activities that we do in the wilderness. And so anyways, that's my little talk about plan ahead and permit, and looking at your permits and your travel plans. You know, a friend of mine always says, a goal without a plan is simply a wish. And I always believe firmly that persistent planning prevents pitiful performance. So I want to thank you all for listening to my video, and I'm going to try to go to a hike once this park opens up. And I wish you all a good day, and I'm looking forward to hearing your videos as well. Thank you.